Welcome back to the second video in this two-part series all about increasing the value that you can offer as a web and UI designer by creating super high-fidelity prototypes inside of ProtoPie. In the last video, I gave you a tour of ProtoPie, we got you started, got the project up and running, and we did a couple of really cool and complex things. But in this second video, we're gonna take it to the next level by tapping into your device's native features, like the camera, like the keyboard. We're gonna do form validation and all sorts of really cool stuff. So pull up a chair, get ready, open your ProtoPie, and let's get started. All right, let's jump back into our project. We have a lot of really cool things we're gonna do, starting with native status bars. We have our project, but as we've been viewing it in our device, the problem is we're always stuck with the time being 9:41, and that's because our status bar is an actual design element, and we wanna use as many native features as we can. It's actually about 5 o'clock my time right now. I'd like to see it say that time, not some random time. So to do that, I'm gonna go ahead and delete the status bar out of the layers panel. I'm gonna have nothing selected. I'm just gonna select over here off the canvas. And then you'll notice when I do that, I get this option to turn on the system status bar. And we have a new status bar that's popped up, and I get to change the color of that status bar. We'll keep it black, as that's it's a dark status bar on light. But let's head over to our camera as well, and let's make sure that we have our native status bar turned on, and we do, and then we have the contents of that being white. So now we're gonna hit device, and this is actually gonna set up a personal staging server right here for us, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna preview this by scanning the QR code. And when I do that, sure enough, we get the native time of around 5 o'clock right there on my phone. That's the native time. That's the local time, which is super duper cool. All right. While status bars are kind of cool, what's even cooler would be to tap into our device's native camera. So let's do that. Next, I'm here on my camera screen, and this is a mock-up. This is a representation of how our camera might be. In our design tool, the best we might be able to do is maybe even put video in there to make it seem like it's the real thing. But what if we actually instead come in here and delete our camera background? Now we have nothing there. We have a little focus meter there. We have a top and a bottom bar, each have like a gradient on top of it. But let's go up into our media in the top left corner and grab an actual camera shape. So we're going to draw a rectangle, and you can see it has that little camera icon on there. And as we draw it and release it, that's now going to be our camera. So I'm going to just rename this camera in my layers panel here. And then I'm going to drag it all the way down to the bottom so that we can see all the other elements on top of it. Now, when we have our camera layer selected, we immediately get some really cool options here. Like it's going to auto start. Do we want it to be the front camera or the rear facing camera of our device? Let's start with rear. All right, once we've done that, we're going to go ahead up to the top right-hand corner. You can see we already have our device running our prototype right here. We just need to rerun it with the changes. So let's go ahead and press run. And we're gonna get a crazy noise, and that crazy noise has just opened up our camera screen and it has launched the camera on start. We can actually close that down, and remember, we were able to click right here and open up the camera. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is click down below over here and actually flip the camera around. That's the next thing we're going to want to do. All we have to do is set up a simple trigger and response, and we're going to double click in to find our icon here, and that is the camera flip icon. Let's add a trigger. You know what to do, a tap trigger. And what type of response should we do? We're going to do some sort of camera response. This opens up a whole bunch of contextual options for us. For instance, we're going to select the layer. Which layer? It's the camera layer. It's the only camera layer we have on the screen, which tells us we can have multiple camera layers and have it doing different things. That's pretty cool. So we're going to go ahead and fire it up. We're connecting it to that camera layer. We're saying, hey, we want you to start, but we want you to actually flip to the switch. Whatever it's currently on, we want you to switch the other way. This is great because now our actual button is toggleable. It works multiple ways, and we can just keep switching back and forth. I'm going to go ahead and press run one more time, and let's come back and check out our camera switching, right? So we can look right down here. And now we're switching to the current camera that's filming, and we can switch back. All right, next up, let's work with some keyboards and some native input fields inside of ProtoPie. We have our home screen open, and remember what it does. We can either fling open the menu or click on settings, and it's going to open up our settings menu or our settings screen. From here, we want to actually be able to click into these input fields and actually type in there and fill them out. So what we're going to do is come back in and make our way in our screens or scenes, excuse me, over to settings, and we're going to want to add a new type of element in here. We're going to want to add the input label. So let's go up to text, we'll grab input. What that's going to allow us to do is just draw an input field right on top, and we can resize it so it's exactly the way we want it. It's lining up, let's say right there. You'll notice it gives us some placeholder text and it has a style. All of that stuff can be found over in the contextual panel. So for instance, the fill, we just want it to be white so it matches the rest of our design. And our placeholder text, maybe we want that to be just a little bit softer like this. And we could even change like the typography and all that kind of stuff too. We'll just keep it what it is like right now, the system default font. That works for us. But we can change the placeholder text. And so that first one was name, so we might write the word name there, and that works. And what we'll do is just we'll kick it up so we can still see that design or the line right underneath it. Why don't we take this is input 1, we'll just copy and paste. So the next thing we need to do is get rid of our fake keyboard. We don't need that anymore. So that's a design element, get rid of it, right? Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to get it out of the way, and now we have this nice clean settings screen. When we actually click on an input field, our keyboard rolls up, and we can put our name here, like, hi, my name's Jesse, and my new password is this, and my new password is that. Now here's the problem we have here is no one wants to display their password as we're writing it. We want to dictate a type of input field that's secure specifically for passwords. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in, we're going to click on our confirm, or excuse me, our password input field over here, and we're going to go over to our contextual panel. We can make it a single line or a multi-line. We can change a lot of different things about it, but down at the bottom we have keyboard options, and we can say, hey, we want that to be a URL or a number. We want it to be a text password, and we can also change what it says on the keyboard, right? It currently says go, but that's not actually the right thing, right? We want it to say next, and then we want this to be the same thing. We want it to be a text password, and then maybe what we can do is put done right here, and this can be basic text, and then it can say the word next as well. So now you'll notice when we bring up our name field, it says next down here in the bottom right hand corner, and then if we click here, it still says next. But you can see we're typing in our password, we get secure password field, and the last one, when we tab down, it has that native capability to tab down, we have the done ability, right? And now we can actually press enter and it will hide, check that out, it'll hide the native keyboard, right? So what's also really cool is if you press save, press anywhere else except for input fields, it'll hide the keyboard because that's a native functionality. All right, we've added some keyboard functionality, but at this point, we are still pretending to input our passwords because I don't know the passwords that I put in here. They could have matched. They could have been totally different. Maybe this one says, 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe this one says supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, and we press save. Well, we're going to then move on? Like, that can't be good. So the first thing we're going to do is let's set up a jump trigger here, right? We're going to say, hey, on tap of the button, we want to jump to the home. So, hey, on tap of the button, so let's go BTN. On tap of our button here, we want it to jump to home, and we can smart animate it, or we can just do like a slide out. Let's do slide out, and we'll go from left to right. And let's actually go back to our home screen and go find our settings interaction. It'll jump to settings, but not smart animate. Let's slide it in from right to left. Okay, so now we have the ability to slide into settings, and if we go back, or excuse me, press save, it should go back. Okay, fantastic. You'll notice we had a little bit of a problem there, right? We opened this up, we moved into settings, and we're either going to press the back button or save. It comes back, but our menu's still up. That's really, really funky, right? What's happening here is we've actually told ProtoPie to change the state, and then we've clicked settings, navigated away from it, but as we've navigated away, it's kept the state of that home screen with that slide out menu exactly where it was because we didn't tell it to do anything else. We can fix this really easily. We can find that interaction, that tap trigger that's on our settings link there, and then we can head to our jump, but before or after we jump, actually, we want to add something else. We want to scroll down here and hit reset. And what do we want to reset? We want to reset the current scene. You're not even going to see it happen. It's going to jump, but as it's jumping, at least it'll reset it for us really quickly. So let's head right here. We'll open this up. We should be able to press settings, and you saw that reset happen in the background, right? So what we could do is instead, we can make the jump happen here. Notice the jump is happening, and then the reset can make sure that it happens after. We don't want to see it at all. So let's do this, press settings, and the reset is happening somewhere in the background. How do we know? When we come back, it's reset the state exactly how it was. It looks really, really nice. Okay, now from here, we also want to go back to our settings, and you'll notice that, like we said, we can put anything we want here. That's coming up good. We can put anything we want here, but the passwords might not match. Now, we don't want to be able to press save and move back if the passwords don't match. So let's do a little bit of form validation here. I'm back on my settings screen. I'm going to head up to that tap trigger. We're saying, hey, when you tap that button, we want something to happen. We're going to want it to happen before the jump. That's what we're actually going to want. But we're going to create it right here. And what we're going to do is a condition, right? And that condition is going to actually compare two separate things, and if that condition is true, and only if that condition is true, we will make the jump. So what's the condition going to be? Well, we're going to say if the button, not the button, but we want input 2, if input 2, if the, not the x of input 2, that would be the x-axis, but instead, let's find the, if we scroll down and find the text, if the text inside of input 2 is equal to, let's find input 3 here, is equal to the text value of input 3, then we're going to allow the jump to happen. Okay, so let's run it again. Let's see what happens. I'll put my name in here. Boom, just like so. I'm going to move this out so we can see it a little bit better. I'm going to write 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to write something crazy right here. I'm going to press save. Nothing happens, right? Why don't we add a little bit of form validation here to make this a little bit more useful for our users? What we're going to do is we're going to add another conditional here, and we can actually copy and paste this conditional, right? We can delete the jump here, and we can say, hey, instead of them being equal to, if they are not equal, we're going to do something else. Why don't we do something really drastic, like change the color of the text and even add an error message? So to do that, I'm going to grab some simple text here. I'm going to drag out a text field, and that text field is really, really big. I don't know why that text field is so big. Let's drag it up. We're just going to do a little bit of supporting text here, and that text is going to say your passwords don't match, and why don't we make that red so there's no misunderstanding what's happening. And let's bring the size of this text down. It can be really, really small, something like that. And boom, we'll put that here, and we'll just line that up a little bit with our password input field. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the opacity of this down, and then what I'm going to do is I have this saved. I'm going to call it error state. I want to make sure that's outside of the button layer, right? We don't want that. We want this error state to be hidden. It's sitting in the layer stack right there, and its opacity is down. Let's go back to our condition here and say, I want to change the opacity of what element? You guessed it. I want to change that for our error state, and I want to bring the opacity of it up to 100. Okay, so let's bring our prototype out here. Let's try this again. Boom, boom, boom. Do something completely different and press save. Boom, your passwords don't match. But we can do a little bit better than that. Why don't we even change the color? We'll change the color here, color of our input 3, our text. Why don't we change that to red? And we'll duplicate this. Let's just say Command C, Command V. Let's change and find input 2. Its color will turn red as well. Let's preview again. Bring this out in the middle. Zoom in. My name is Jesse. My password is this. My other password is this. Bam. And it's going to say your passwords don't match. We change the color to it. It's really, really obvious. Now I can come back in and just do a much simpler password like 123. 123, and boom, it's accepted. Now we could take next steps and do confirmation, we could validate, and then if it's correct, we could change the validation again by resetting things. The sky is the limit. You can do all sorts of things. Let's venture into a little bit more of an advanced topic called variables. You'll notice down here on the left-hand side, there's an unused panel. We haven't even ventured into this territory yet called variables. Variables are a programming concept where we're able to store information inside of something called a variable and reuse that piece of information over and over and over again. So let's go ahead and create our very first variable here. We're going to do this for all scenes. You can do it for just specific scenes. If you don't know what the difference is, I would just encourage you to do it for all scenes always. We can rename this variable. We'll just call this username, and this camel casing, this uppercase in the middle as the words change, it's a very programmer centric thing. We have our variable selected. We can make it a color, we can make it text, we can make it a number. Why don't we make this a text, and we'll store this right now and say Jesse. So now we have a piece of information. That's my name. It's saved as Jesse, and anywhere I insert that variable, that piece of information will come up dynamically. It's pretty much programming inside of a prototyping tool, which is pretty rad. All right, let's head back into our design. You can see I have this little tag here, this little green tag that has the username, and even when I press preview, I can see that username variable being displayed. Why is that there? Because we turned on the little bug icon, so it tells us we can preview it on the desktop. If we turn it off, it disappears. That's just a way for us to check and make sure, and we'll be using it here in a second, that the information is actually established and or changing. All right, we're back here on our home screen. You can see we have a name being implemented multiple times, but the problem is that's a design element. It's just like a static status bar. It's not dynamic. It's not real information. So we want to use the variable that we've just created. Let's start with this one inside of our menu bar. We're actually going to add a new trigger, and we're going to talk about one that we haven't used yet, and that is the start trigger. This is going to say, hey, on start, when the page starts, just as the page actually loads, and we want to start with the jump, right? As soon as somebody jumps to this page, this is going to happen. Whatever is below this is going to take place. And our response is we want to do something. Remember, not with the camera like we did last time. We're not going to move an item, but we want to do something that has to do with text. All right, so now we have a bunch of options here. Which layer do we want? We want that name layer that's over there. That's the real text. And we can just change it right here. We could change it manually if we want to. Or we could drop down to formula, and we could start inputting our first formula. Now, you can click this little formula button, and that'll roll out the formula creator. You can press plus, and you get access to all sorts of stuff, but you'll see the very thing at the very top is a variable. It's our variable called username. And that's it. That's all you have to do. We're going to press OK, and you'll see what we're saying here is, hey, on start, when we get here, at the very time that it jumps here, we want to update this text, and that text layer is called name, and we want to give it a formula. We want to use the variable. And now we're going to press preview. We'll drag this in the middle, zoom in a little bit, and you can see, boom, it has the name there. We're going to copy and paste. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab name large. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to say, hey, formula, username. Great, fantastic. Let's press preview. There's my name right there. We drag it out. There's my name right there. But we had this nice little like hi message in there. So we're going to fix that right now. Let's come back and we'll go to our trigger. And you can see we have a little formula here, right? That formula is so basic. That formula is username. Put the variable in. But what if we want to do something else? We're going to do what's called concatenate, which is kind of like a programming thing. We're going to open and close some parentheses. We're going to add a plus right here, and we'll put something like hi, and we'll put a little apostrophe and a space. And let's try that. We'll preview. It says, hi, Jesse. And so all I did there was do, like a slight bit of programming, right? Which is anytime you want what's called plain text, you put it inside of some quotations, double quotations, and then adding a plus here saying, hey, add these two things together, stitch these two things together. So we say, hi, whatever the username is. And the moment that we launch that page, it has that information in there. Well, that's it. That's the end of our two-part video series all about increasing the value that you can offer as a web and UI designer using a tool like ProtoPie to offer super high-fidelity prototypes. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell notification icon so you know when more videos like this one come out. Make sure that you're signed up for a ProtoPie account. The link is down in the description. I have a bunch of helpful links for ProtoPie and the ProtoPie Academy so you can learn even more about how to use this amazing tool, because the more that you dive in, the more capabilities you have in this tool, the more wow factor you bring as a creative in the industry. So sign up, get going, learn even more, start building more and more of these amazing prototypes that'll make you more desirable and more hireable in the industry. If you have any questions, leave those down in the comments. I hope you're having an amazing week designing amazing things, making amazing things, and growing in your skill set. We'll see you in the next one.